Remember the yahrtzeit used to come there to go with the oxygen, the lungs.
Oh yeah.
Came yesterday, shit.
No, I don't remember.
We did the morning. We left it on everyone.
Okay, let's go.
Want to make it better?
Better, you put it back to him.
Some water?
I have. Okay.
Ruchem Aboim B'Shem Hashem. Shem Yegin Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Zav Smith on Shana Meuberes Lar Halacha, the Bar Mitzvah, yahrtzeit, etc. in a leap year. Rabbi Riga Shekoyach, Rabbi Simcha Cohen, sponsoring today's shir, Lilu Nishmas Oviv, Yitzchak Ben B'Shol HaKoyen Ol Shalom, yahrtzeit Shvat, and Shmosei Tzur V'Tzur HaChaim. That was a great source of sponsoring a shir called Yegin Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rabbi Smith.
Consider the following question. Someone was born 13 years ago, Zayin Adar, and there's only one Adar that year. And this year we have two Adars. When is his Bar Mitzvah? First Adar or second Adar? Now we're not talking about when he wears a hat and when he makes the party and his presents. The question is he a Gadol, Adar Aleph or Adar Beis? 30 years of Kol Torah Kula. You realize that this question of Adar, we have two Adar, is not only get to Bar Mitzvahs. Someone was nifta on a regular Adar. When is the yahrtzeit? Halachos regarding Bas Mitzvah. Is a girl chayiv in all the mitzvahs for the whole month? The interesting shaila, question of yichud. A ben Bas Gimel Shana, there's a shaila of yichud. Or 9 years of a boy. How do you calculate? Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni. And you have to realize that this shaila, there's no kula or chumrah. You'll say, treat him like a bar mitzvah boy. Why not? Could you count him into a minyan? Could you give him an aliyah? Could it be mighty someone in Kiddush? We'll soon see there's a fascinating shaila, a child that's born Lamed Adar, which comes out when you have a leap year. And there are some years that there is no Lamed Adar. I have two grandchildren, twins born on Lamed Adar. But the good news is they were girls, so it wasn't a gear to Bar Mitzvah. But they had that shaila. When is that? There's the vanishing birthday, the vanishing yahrtzeit. Of course, I heard a shaila about someone who made a beautiful Bar Mitzvah for his child that was born on Zois Chanukah. And the next morning when it came to give him an aliyah, the Rav realized that the boy was not yet Bar Mitzvah. And we'll see this and many more. This is just to whet your appetite. But I want to say one thing, that this question of a leap year is not a rare question like, Birchas Achama once in a blue moon. 7 out of 19 years, we have leap years. It's more than a third of our years, we have leap years. So we have to figure out once and for all. But I want to make a very clear disclaimer. Some people have mental block, they get nervous from dates and calendars. Well, today we're not going to have any problem with dates and calendars. It's all going to be svaris. So if you want to get confused, you'll have to go elsewhere. Not here. Here's going to be straightforward facts, and we'll make it as real as possible. What I think we have to do, our derech ways to try to find one yesod that gives the clarity to the sugya. I want to ask a simple question. When you have two Adars, how do you look at two Adars? Which is the real Adar? Let me be more clear. We know Pesach Sheni is just a makeup, but the real Pesach is Pesach. Yom Tov Sheni, the Sheni is not the real Yom Tov, the first day. Can we suggest that Adar Sheni is not the real Adar? And then you could also, I guess, the same question, when you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, like we have Adar, Lamed Adar, and then you have the next month, Adar Beis. When you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, which is the real Rosh Chodesh? Is Lamed part of the old month and Rosh Chodesh part of the new month? So regarding Adar, I could say simply, Iba Yisei Mikra, Iba Yisei Misvar. First of all, which is the real Adar? Well, when do we have Purim? Purim is in the second Adar. That makes sense. Okay, many people are trying to find a source to have 2 Purims. That would be a wonderful, he'll win the Nobel Peace Prize if you figure out, a makar for that. But it's only 1 Purim. So if Purim is an Adar Sheni, so too is Adar Sheni, the real Adar Sheni. But more so, and that's the Yerushalmi in Megillah Aleph Hey, the Yerushalmi seems to say beferish that Adar Rishon is a Tosefes, is the added month, and Adar Sheni is real. And it's noteworthy, both Rashi and Tosefos, the Rosh Hashanah Yud Testament Beis, says this beferish, that the Adar Rishon is a Tosefes, is the addition, and the real Adar is Sheni. In other words, a Bar Mitzvah and a yahrtzeit, l'chayr, you should keep in Adar Sheni. That's Ibo Yisei Mikra. Ibo Yisei Mesvara, I think is also pashut. Why do we have to have a leap year, an extra Adar? So to make a long story short, that we go with the lunar year, the Levana, but sometimes we have to keep in mind the solar, the year that the Goyim use. There's 11-day difference between the solar and lunar year. So approximately every 3rd year we're behind a month. So we have to catch up. We have to have Pesach and Chodesh Aviv. And this year Pesach would be in the beginning of March, February. It's off. Oy bazoi, the first month is stalling, is sort of to give us time to realign that Purim should be in its right time, and Pesach should be in the right time in Nisan. In fact, the Meiri in Tezvav uses a lashon that Adar Rishon is like an extended Shvat. Just to stall till we get to Adar where it belongs, and then we'll have Nisan when it belongs. And the Mishnah Berurah in Nun Hey Mem Hey, Adar Rishon le'nikra Adar l'chodesh she'ibur. Sharein koirin es a Megillah ba'Adar Rishon. And then I saw, Adar Sheni, I'm sorry. And then I saw the Levush and Tov Reish Pei Hey Sif Katan Aleph, Mavel Dik Levush. He says, when is Mazel Od the Dogim? That's going on. Chodesh Sheni of Adar. And Adar Rishon is only Tashlumin l'Chodesh Shava. So therefore he says that the real month is Adar Sheni. So basically we say that the real Adar is Adar Sheni. But before we apply this, we have one point we have to clarify. The Mishnah Nedarim Daf Samach Gimel says the following halacha. Let's say today I get up and I make a neder. Today's Chaf Aleph Shvat. I make a neder. I'm not going to drink wine for a year. Okay. Then someone says, oh, you picked the wrong year to make a neder because, this year there's 2 Adars. So up to Mishnah, if you make a neder not to drink wine for a year, I can't drink wine for 13 months. If you would have made it last year, 12 months, but what's the pshat? Very pashut. You said a year, the Torah year depends on each year. If it's 13 months, that's what a year is. Zok the Mishnah Vaita, but let's say he made a neder, I'm not going to drink wine until Adar, and doesn't specify which Adar. So the Gemara explains, the Mishnah is going to be Yehuda Shita. Stam Adar is Rishon. So you can't drink wine until next week. Stam Adar Rishon? I thought Ika Adar Sheni. Will the real Adar stand up? Which is the real Adar? So a lot has been written, you could imagine. But to make a long story short, in Yanenu, both are true. The main Adar is Sheni. That's why this Purim and Adar Sheni. But Lashon B'nei Adam, how do we talk? When I say I'm going to help you until Adar, or I make an Adar till Adar, what's the Lashon B'nei Adam? First Adar is always Adar. Okay, you have a Chassan Adar Sheni. Because Stam Adar is Rishon. Therefore, both are true. Which is the real Adar? Sheni, Purim. If I say a neder, a contract, a commitment, then Adar Rishon is Stam, because that's the way we talk. But which is the real Adar? Adar Sheni. Now, obviously, there are certain halachas that are totally in months. Le'alechem Kaddish, 11 months. Avelis, 12 months. Zok Mari Bruna and Simon Kuf Tzadakei, there's no doubt about it, that on a leap year, you don't have to keep an extra month because it's a leap year. 11 months is 11 months. 12 is 12. Why do I say that? Because this year is a perfect illustration of all these concepts in one. someone was nifta Tezvav B'Shvat. So the yahrtzeit will be next year, 13 months later, Tezvav B'Shvat, because yahrtzeit is the day. He'll stop saying Kaddish 12 months after the Yom of the Ptira. He'll stop saying Kaddish, Tezvav Kislev. When will stop Avelis? Tezvav Tevis. Why? Because 12 months doesn't change. 11 months doesn't change. Yahrtzeit is totally in a shana. That could change. That could be 12 months, and that could be a year, depending on the calendar. So let's review very briefly what we learned. The Ikka Ada is Sheni. Stam Loshim Bnei Adam, where we talk, that's Adar Rishon. If it's totally in a year, a full year, Iber will be 30. But if it's totally in months, months doesn't change. Now sit back or sit up and enjoy a Yigir HaPecha Kisoicha. Will apply this to the many cases. I'll start with a simple shaila. A person is born Adar Sheni 13 years ago, and assume this year is a regular Adar. So does he have to wait till Nisan to become Bar Mitzvah because he's missing the first Adar? The answer is no, that's nonsense. You Bar Mitzvah on the day. If now there's only one Adar, you Bar Mitzvah on your birthday. So it doesn't make a difference that you could have been a leap year. It makes no difference. You're born an Adar, Bar Mitzvah an Adar. Let's say Fakert, someone was born Zayin Adar Rishon, and there was a leap year. So then he says, when it comes to my Bar Mitzvah, I want to be Bar Mitzvah in Zayin Shvat, because I had Adar Sheni in the middle. So he wants to count 12 months till Bar Mitzvah. Also, Narish. Bar Mitzvah is totally not in 12 months, it's totally in 13 years. And that's the Mechaba in Nun Hey Sif Tes, that it comes to Bar Mitzvah, you have to wait 13 full years. Now let me bring this out even more beautiful. I'll ask you a riddle, but very simple. Let's say I was born, Tezvav Shvat. A friend of mine, a few years younger than I, we have the same birthday, Tezvav Shvat. And I tell him, you know something? I happen to know that when I was Bar Mitzvah, we have the same Bar Mitzvah day, right? When I was Bar Mitzvah, I was a month older than you when you were Bar Mitzvah. It sounds strange. Don't we all get Bar Mitzvah 13 years? But it's not so strange. Because my 13 years from when I was born till I was Bar Mitzvah, there were 5 Iburim, 5 extra months. So I have 13 years and 5 extra Iburim. In his 13 years from birth to Bar Mitzvah, there's only 4. Let me tell you, in 13-year regular cycle, either you could have 4 Iburim or 5. Now you have to look at the chart. That might be confusing, but look at the chart, you'll see what I'm talking about. But in a 13-year period, either you have 4 Iburim or 5. So it's very possible that I had 5 Iburim. So I'm 13 years plus 5 months. And him, on the same Bar Mitzvah, same day, only had 4. So he's 13 years and 4 Iburim. You know what the answer is? Who cares? As long as you have 13 years, we're both Bar Mitzvah. Now, this is not my Chiddush, my Remintz in a very Yisodistic Tshuva, Osunti Simentes points this out. Next question is, of course, much more Negeyim. And that is, I was born in a regular Adar 13 years ago. Rather, this year, 13 years ago was a regular Adar, and this year, we have 2 Adarim. So I was born 13 years ago, Zayin Adar. Now I look at the calendar, there's 2 Zayin Adars. When is my Bar Mitzvah? Person that has yahrtzeit, the same question. Zoktim means, what's the Shaila? Bar Mitzvah is totally in Ikka Adar. When is the Ikka Adar? Adar Sheni. Then he says, why don't you make him Bar Mitzvah earlier? Voshnella. He says, what do you mean? He's still a baby in Adar Rishon. He's not Bar Mitzvah yet. You have to wait for the real Adar. So you can't be Mechayev Bar Mitzvah if he's incapable. You can't turn a Katan into a Gadol. So if he's born on a regular Adar, and this year there are 2 Adarim, is Bar Mitzvah's Adar Sheni. And this is quoted by the Ramah in Siman Nun Hey Sif Yud. You're born on a regular Adar, Bar Mitzvah comes out this year, Bar Mitzvah will be an Adar Sheni. Now, I must tell you that this, although the Ramah says it, but I can't say L'chol HaDeis. There's a Tshuvas Marash Halevi who lived after the Ramah, Siman Tezvav, And he makes a very interesting argument. And he says, let's say he was born Adar Sheni, 13 years ago. And this year is a regular Adar. When is the Bar Mitzvah? It's a Shaila. Adar, right? So now that he's born Adar Rishon, you can't push off the Bar Mitzvah in this year until Adar Sheni. Make it an Adar Rishon. And also, Mitzvah b'ol yodcha tach mitzena. The earlier better you give him mitzvahs. So his chiddush is very hard to understand. Because his main yisoid is that if you have 2 Adars, so then we go mitzvah in an Adar Pshuta on the regular month. But this year we have 2 Adarim, and the real Adar is Sheni. But I think his main taina is, how do you push off godless Yiddishkeit for a full month? But the emes is, I told you, my Rimin says just the opposite svarim. You can't make him Bar Mitzvah a month before his Bar Mitzvah. The Lavush in Tov Reish Pei Hey says, even though Ein Mavirin Ala Mitzvahs, but here you can't put him into Chiyuvei Torah if he's still a baby. More so, Tain is the Pri Chodesh, in Sif Yod, he quotes this Marash HaLevi. Since the Rishalmi said that the first month is the Tosefes, the second one is real, you can't become Bar Mitzvah in a Tosefes. And that's why the Poskim agree that we don't look at the Marash HaLevi's Cheshvan, we go with the Ramah. 13 years ago he was born on Zayin Adar, his Bar Mitzvah will be this year Zayin Adar Beis. Comes again the Beis Shloima in Even Ezer Siman Nun Vav, and he says, Avada, we go with the Ramah, not the Marash HaLevi. But you mean to tell me you're going to start putting on tefillin Zayin Adar Beis? Really? The Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Lamed Zayin that a boy that's old enough to keep Kedusha tefillin has to wear tefillin. Maybe the age of 10, 11, some Sfaradim still do that. We wait till Bar Mitzvah. But to wait in this case till Zayin Adar Beis, you can't do that. B'choishes Marash HaLevi, at least to put on tefillin Zayin Adar Aleph. But he says don't put on Zayin Adar Aleph because people think he's Bar Mitzvah and he's really not. You can give him an Aliyah, he's not counted the minyan. Put on Vav or Hey to show it's just to be Choishes Marash HaLevi. And this I saw Rav Vosna in Chelik Yud Kofeit by Yan Yosef, the Puparov, Lamed Gimel, Lairos Nosin Yud Beis Hamachei, all say that even though the Bar Mitzvah will be this month in Adar Beis, but put on tefillin a little bit before Zayin Adar Aleph. Als Kedushas tefillin, not else we have any sveikis about the Bar Mitzvah. Now, I know many poskim don't go with this either. We have no nervin, we're not nervous. The Ramah says Bar Mitzvah is Adar Sheni, and I always put on the day Bar Mitzvah. So if you hear someone that puts on Adar Sheni tefillin for the first time, he's like a Ramah, and the same Ramah holds, don't put on even a day in advance. But one thing I will tell you, that a year like this year, where 13 years ago was a regular Adar, and this we have 2 Adarim, you'll look at your calendar, there are no Bar Mitzvahs that are going to take place this year in Adar Rishon. Because Mini Klaish was like the Ramah. So if you come late to a shir or whatever, don't say, I had a Bar Mitzvah last night. It's not going to work. So you have to find a better excuse. But there are no Bar Mitzvahs this year, Adar Rishon. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you a Davar Nifla Ma'oid Ma'oid. It's a riddle that I didn't make up. It's based on a Gemara. The Rishonim and the Kadmonim say this riddle. How is it possible, and I'll use me and you just so we could relate to it, that I'm a little older than you, yet your Bar Mitzvah is almost a month before mine? That sounds ridiculous. I'm older than you, so how'd you catch up? How'd you get ahead of me? But it's very simple. I was born Chavtes Adar a number of years ago. Rishon. You were born Beis Adar Sheni 3 days after me, so I'm older than you, right? Bar Mitzvah year is only one Adar. So based on the above, it comes out that your Bar Mitzvah is going to be Beis Adar, and me, the Zaken, I'm Bar Mitzvah Chavtes, 4 weeks after you. Who says this? Not me. The Ogur, one of the Gdolei Rishonim, in the back of his sefer, he has what he calls Hatzois Hachidos, a presentation of riddles. And this is one of them. And the Pisron, he says, is, yes, it's shaykh that I am older than you, and you have a mitzvah before I am. His reason is, bar mitzvah is totally in years, not totally in months, so who cares? A later God, my remains that I meant to Simon Tess, even more fascinating. Someone asked him, I was born 13 years ago on a regular Adar, and this year's 2 Adar, what should I do? So he says, you know something? He writes back, your Zayda 40 years ago asked me a riddle. And this exact riddle. He doesn't quote the Augur. So we have a Rishon, Augur, and a Kadmon, my remains from the earliest Achrayim. But comes to get into Beis Yosef and Simon and Hay and says, you know something? It's not the Chiddush of the Augur, it's a Beferishi Gemara. In Erech and Lamed Aleph Med Beis, the Gemara says the following. 2 people, or I sold 2 homes, but they are Chaim. One Tesvav Adar Rishon, and one in the beginning of Adar Sheni. So the halacha is next year, it's Nechlat, and the deal is fine. Next year comes along, is only one Adar. So which house is Nechlat first? Zog the Gemara. Well, anybody knows that Aleph Adar is before Tezvav. So one I sold afterwards is Nechlat first. Frag the Gemara, that doesn't make sense. He used the house longer, and he has to wait, more time. So what should I tell you? That's Iber Shana. So I sold a house in Tezvav, another one in Adar Sheni, and one is Nechlat before the other one. The Gemara is the same exact case about animals, Bechor, that one was born before the other one, both Bechoris. In fact, the Gemara makes like very real, very dramatic. Why can one animal tell the other, hey, you were born before me, and I have to go first? And the answer is, that's Iber Shana. So to Beis Yosef and Simon Nun Hey, what the Augur says is the first one, Erechin. So here we have this riddle, which the Shulchan Aruch paskins in Nun Hey Yud, that if you're born in a leap year, one is born Chav Tes Ad Aleph, one is born Beis Adar Beis, so he's 3 days older, but the mitzvah will be 4 weeks before his older friend. Now, this needs hezbollah. I don't want to say illogical, but it doesn't sound logical. You're born first, and you become younger. So there's a Yesod, which is the Yesod of today. Yushalmi in Ksubis Aleph Beis, also in Adarim, tied to the pasuk in Tilim with the following halacha. A girl until 3 years old, the Psulim come back, but after 3, Psula and a Chayzrim. Zokti Yushalmi, very clearly, let's say a girl became 3 years old. She had a birthday party, she's 3 years old. So Psula and a Chayzrim. Then Bez was Ma'abed the Chodesh, and then there's another Adar. So then her real birthday is Adar Sheni. Suddenly, the Metzias will change, and Psuleha Chayzrim until her birthday in Adar Sheni. Zogtich Sam Soif in a Cheshvan Archaim Siman Yudalid. From this Yushalmi we see the Teva Mishubedes LaTorah. The world operates and revolves around Torah, and the Torah controls the Teva. If there wouldn't be an Iber Shana, she would lose up Psulim Gimel Adar. Now that there's 2 Adarim, it comes back until Gimel Adar Beis. Zogtich Sam Soifa, that's the pshat and the riddle. It's not a riddle, it's Toradik. You might think it's illogical, but it's what Rabbi Ber called Torah logic. That's the Torah logic. That you look at this year, you look at Shonin. So he was born before his friend, but in this year you look at the dates. And the truth is, Marimins himself, who says this riddle, he alludes to the Yerushalmi of Lakel Gomer Alai, that the Torah controls the Teva. So it's not such a Chiddush. But wait, we're not finished yet. How is it possible that you could have twin brothers? One was born before the second one, and yet the second one is by mitzvah a month before his brother. Now I'm going to use the name Yakov and Esav for a good reason, you'll soon see. But let's describe the following, and we have to be politically correct, so I'll say one brother Esav was born the end of Adar Aleph. Now, end is very subjective. 60, 70 to 90, I'm not going to get involved. Esav was born the end of Adar Aleph. Yakov was born a few minutes later, the beginning of Adar Beis. So who's older? Esav, like we know. 13 years later, the Bar Mitzvah year, or birth, whatever it may be, any year actually, and there's only one Adar. Who's Bar Mitzvah, who's older that month? Well, let's think. Yakov was born Aleph Adar. Esav was born the end of Adar. So Yakov is a month older than his older brother. This is not the Ogur, but this Mari Mintz mentions this. That it's possible that a younger brother could be a month older than the older brother. But wait, you haven't seen anything yet. Let's say these two brothers, Yakov and Esav, got a little older, and let's assume they had a third brother who died. So Yibum Chalitza goes to the older brother. Who gets the Kedima, Yakov or Esav? Well, let's say Yitzchak died. Who gets a double portion, Yakov or Esav? Who respects who on a regular year? Maybe Esav has to respect Yakov, he's the older brother. So this is not Mari Mintz. This I saw in the Halachos Ketanis, Chelik Beis, Kuf Ayin Dalid. And he says, guess what? This is the meaning of Rav Yavoit So'ir. That if this year he's older, he gets the double portion, and he gets the Yibum, and this year Esav has to respect Yaakov. And he writes, maybe that's the pshat in the pasuk. That's the story about Yaakov. Even though it says the Avos are born not an Adar, but this Yaakov and Esav war. Pila ploy. That means Yerusha, Yibum, and Kvoid Ochiv Agadol depends on the year, like Bar Mitzvah does. Now, this also sounds really illogical, but it's Torah logic. It's based on Lokel Gomer Alai. However, this last point is highly debatable. Because it's true, regarding Bar Mitzvah, that's totally in the Bar Mitzvah year, I can understand. He's Bar Mitzvah before his younger brother, before his older brother. But Yerusha, Yibum, is totally in Peter Echem. Who factually was the firstborn? Esav. So who cares that this year, Yaakov's birthday is first? And the truth is, the Mari Mintz that I mentioned earlier, that has this riddle, says for Dava Pashit. Even if the riddle is correct, but regarding Yerusha, is totally in Peter Echem and doesn't change year to year. But more emphatically, the Shvus Yaakov Mechelik Aleph Siman Tes has this very shaila. Actually, it's even more interesting, Ayin Sham. But he says that regarding birth, question of Tatali in Leda, B'choira, Yibum, Kvoid Achiv Agadol, nothing changes. If he was the Peter Echem, he's the Bechor, and that doesn't change. He might be Bar Mitzvah earlier, das yeah. But not that he's the Bechor. You are not the Bechor, Rabbi Yankov. That's not true. And he writes, I saw Halachos Ketanis, but he's not right. The Binyan Siyan, in Simon Kuf, Nun and Kuf Mal, also says, he said it can't be, and he found the Shvus Yaakov that says that the Halachos Ketanis is not right. Now we could add that the truth is regarding Kvoid Ochiv Agadol, what's talking about you have to respect an older person? So the Morin Kedushin says you have to respect even an older guy because they have more life experience. So I was thinking, if it's totally a life experience, so it doesn't change who's Bar Mitzvah is first. Who has more experience, Yaakov or Esav in the world? Esav. He's a little older, okay, not so much older. But that's why the truth is, if you think about it, the Bar Mitzvah and the riddle is all the same Yisoid, Lokel Gomer Alai. It's all based on the same concept. And I think that's beautifully why the Shulchan Aruch puts these two halachas in one Sif Yud, Siman Nun Hey. The Mechaber says, how is it shaykh that he's born after Bar Mitzvah first? The Ogur, that's the Mechaber. The Ramah adds, if you're born in a regular year, and Adar Bar Mitzvah is in a double Adar, then your Bar Mitzvah is an Adar Sheni. It's not just two halachas put one after the other. It's the same svara. Why is an older brother, a younger brother Bar Mitzvah first, Lakel Goyim Alai? So why is if I was born Adar and now it's two Adar, I have to wait till Adar Sheni? It's the same Lakel Goyim Alai. And now you also understand, and that's the Chassam Seifa points out, That's why it doesn't make a chilek if one has 4 iburim or 5 in his 13 years. Not the psulim, but call it the Shnei Cyrus, go with the Torah logic. And that totally in bar mitzvah date, nothing else. So it's all the same idea. And again, the Chassam Sofer says, a chidush pele ma'od, that let's say a boy a long time ago was born, and it came his birthday, Gimel Adar, and made him bar mitzvah. And he had Shnei Cyrus, in fact. Then they ma'abed another Adar, we say it's Shumah. It's not Cyrus. What changed? The Yishalmi. It's the same Yesod. Next question, and listen to this. They were born in a leap year, Adar Aleph, on a leap year. This year is also a leap year. Okay? So what's the Shaila? You're born Zayin Adar Aleph, and let's assume, and this year, which is also a leap year. So what's the Shaila? Isn't Zayin Adar Aleph a perfect shidduch for Zayin Adar Aleph? So isn't it possible the mitzvah is Zayin Adar Aleph? What's the Shaila? Taka, the Marim Mintz, has nearly double pashit. They born Zayin Adar Aleph 13 years ago, which wasn't the case in this cycle, but that's very possible that it matches up. 3 out of 7 times, it's the same 13 years, Ma'ubar and Ma'ubar. So he's born Adar Aleph 13 years ago. The mitzvah is Adar Aleph. The Levush, Tafresh Pei says, Yud Gimel Shleima. What's wrong? But listen, now you can understand the Magen Avraham's problem with that. Frag the Magen Avraham, how can you become a mitzvah Adar Aleph? Which is the Ikar Adar? Adar Sheni. Adar Rishon a Tosefes. How do you become a mitzvah in a Tosefes? Now, the Magen Avraham is saying a chiddush that you're delaying his bar mitzvah, his Yiddishkeit, kol kula, till Adar Sheni. He was born on Adar Rishon. We have an Adar Rishon, but you have to wait till Adar Sheni. This is the Magen Avraham's tremendous chiddush, and the Eilas Tamid, before the Magen Avraham, also says this yesod. However, there's a different way of looking at this. And that is, if if in 13 years later there's a vanishing second Adar, like 13 years ago there were 2 Adar, but today's only 1 Adar. So then it's clear you put it into Adar or Fakert. But here, 13 years ago was Adar Aleph. Today is Adar Aleph. Why not stick with Adar Aleph? And that's why the Poskim say that really the Magen Avraham writes his chiddush because he didn't see the Marim Mintz inside. The Kiva Ega and the Shari Tshuva point out that he based it on a svara that he thought Marim Mintz would agree. But Marim Mintz himself writes the Farish, if you're born in Adar Rishon and 13 years later there is an Adar Rishon, you stay with that birthday. The Chassam Sofer in his Tshuva has an incredible Cheshvan that the first 30 days have such an impact in halacha that after 30 days he's a bar kayama and he's considered a bechor and avelis chas v'shalom. If someone kills him, he's considered a bar kayama. So regarding the first year, the first 30 days have an impact, and that carries on 13 years later. But at the end of the day, it's mind-boggling that you see that this question, 13 years ago he's born Adar Aleph, today's Adar Aleph, is not so pashit. Although the Marim Mintz says that it's pashit, and that's the pashit of the Shulchan Aruch, but Kiva Ega has a problem with that. But what's beautiful, the Shiari Carbon on the Shalmi says a different svar. If he was born on a Tosefes Adar, so was is schlecht is by mitzvah Tosefes Adar? Good it's Tosefes, but it's a perfect shidduch. Tosefes. And that's why we're very comfortable to say, although the Magen Avraham was the Paisik, the Magen Avraham, but it's based on his speculation in Marim Mintz, and Marim Mintz himself writes beferish that if mitzvah is an Adar Rishon, the Paiskim are comfortable to say that we keep Adar Rishon. So let me be very clear. It happened to be that 13 years ago was 1 Adar, and this year is 2. So that's why I said there's no bar mitzvahs in Adar Rishon. Some years you could have it that 13 years earlier there were 2 Adarim, and 13 years later there's 2 Adarim, and then you could have Bar Mitzvahs and Adar Rishon, when it matches up perfectly. Now, let me tell you another shayla. The shenket of today's sugya is, and let me be very clear, I want you to enjoy it as much as I want to be very clear about this. Someone was born 13 years ago on Lamed Adar. In other words, 13 years ago there were 2 Adar, so Lamed Adar is on the map. Not this year, but imagine this year would be only 1 Adar. Okay, this year we have 2 Adar, but let's say we only one Adar. So typically, when Adar goes into Nisan, there's always only 1 day Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's the Metzias. So it goes Chavtes Adar, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So the boy who's born Lamed Adar 12 years ago, Marshall, says, Tati, when's my Bar Mitzvah? If I said, look it up in the calendar. You take a calendar, look it up. All of a sudden he starts shrieking hysterically. I don't exist. My Bar Mitzvah vanished. There's no Lamed Adar. And he's right. That year, punkt his mazel, there's no Lamed Adar. This is what's called the vanishing Lamed Adar. A person has a yahrtzeit Lamed Adar, a Bas Mitzvah, Bar Mitzvah, all these cases. Birthday, it just doesn't exist. Occasionally. Now, 4 out of 7 years, this is, of 7 leap years, this is the way it is. That's the Metzias. So what do you do with a vanishing Bar Mitzvah, birthday, all these shilas? And the pella that I found, I'm happy, at least I'm not the first one that noticed this, the Poiskin, my remins, the Kadmonim speak about Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni, and all the scenarios. No one speaks about this from the Kadmonim. The Minchas Yitzchak Chelik Ches says, how come no one spoke about this? There was no vanishing Lamed Adar. It's the same calendar. I don't know why, but I want to be very clear about it. You're talking about a question: when should Bar Mitzvah be? So you might say, what's the problem? After Chavtes Adar goes Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so make it Nisan, which is shocking. He was born Lamed Adar Aleph. He's born Rosh Chodesh Adar. Make it Rosh Chodesh Adar. You're talking about a month of Yiddishkeit. When is the Bar Mitzvah? No. On the secular calendar, February 29th appears only once in 4 years. My grandparents got married February 29th, so my Zayda saved a lot of money on anniversary presents. Once in 4 years. So that doesn't bother me. You don't have to give presents. But you're talking about a month of Yiddishkeit. What's his existence? What's the yahrtzeit? So again, you should know that there are some that say, just follow the calendar. Chavtes goes into Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But it's very, very hard to accept. Because he was born, you're calling it Lamed Adar Aleph, also known as Rosh Chodesh Adar. So how do you make him from Adar to Nisan? His birthday was an Adar. So it's very possible to say that, what do you mean? He was born in Adar. Zok Tevayan Yos, the Pupa Rav, and the Chuvas Chelik, in Simon Lamed Gimel, Chelik Aleph, let's consider Lamed Adar Aleph, Yom HaRichta, as Rosh Chodesh Adar. So what's your problem? His Bar Mitzvah will be Rosh Chodesh Adar, a month before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The Minchas Yitzchak and Chelik Vav, Simon Ches and Chelik Ches, Simon Zayin, and actually the Binyan Sion, before them both, also has this shayla, and he says, look at Rosh Chodesh 2 days as Rosh Chodesh Adar. Don't be such a lamdan. He was born Rosh Chodesh Adar. When's Bar Mitzvah 13 years from now? Rosh Chodesh Adar. Why Nisan? Why deprive him a month of Yiddishkeit? So here is the first time we started seeing a little bit about 2 days Rosh Chodesh. And the Binyan Sia and the Aruch HaNer and the Pupa Rav assumed that we're looking at it like 1 day Rosh Chodesh. Now, but Rabbi said, let me tell you something absolutely beautiful. So good. We'll say he was born Lamed Adar. No, don't get nervous. He was really Rosh Chodesh. Fine. Let me ask you a different question. Let's assume his friend was born Chavtes Adar, Aleph, right? Not like his Lamdish friend that was born on Lamed, the vanishing day. He had a simple birthday, Chavtes. When is Chavtes Adar's Bar Mitzvah? His friend that's a day older than him. Now it comes only 1 month. When is Chavtes Adar Bar Mitzvah? No, Pashit, Chavtes Adar. Our Lamdin, who's born Lamed, the vanishing day, was born a day after. And when do you say his bar mitzvah is going to be? Rosh Chodesh Adar? A himmel geschehen. Before his friend that was born before him? He's a month before his friend that was born after him? If you tell me Nisan, no, Echrashti. But I was born Lamed, my bar mitzvah is Rosh Chodesh. My friend was born a day before me, his bar mitzvah is Chavtes. You know what the answer is? Lakel Gomer Alai. That's our sugya. And I believe that's why most poskim say that you look at this as a Rosh Chodesh Adar baby. When's his birthday on a regular year? Pshuta. Rosh Chodesh. His friend's Chavtes, big deal. That's another riddle. However, why this is not so simple, because they were Heintige Gedolim. Again, it's all the Heintige Gedolim, but the Bir Halacha did a wonderful job in Chelik Dalar and our Simon. What he heard from Rabbi Yasher, Shlomo Zalman, and Rabbi Moshe says in Yerdei Gimel Nuntes regarding yahrtzeit, that we treat the Lamed as a Rosh Chodesh Nisan bar mitzvah. Chatzkel Rot in his Chuvas and Beis Hey also says that. So that's why Lamaisa, if someone has this shaila, it's not simple. I would say most poskim seem to be noita. We treat it like a Rosh Chodesh Adar, but some follow Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So my good you did, Takai Yashikar for all he does for me. He had the same shaila and he asked different gedolim and he heard different psakim. But what it seems is that the most poskim do feel that in Yesoid we treat him like a Rosh Chodesh Adar. Some people like to wait, make a kiddush on Rosh Chodesh Adar, Shabbos, but the sud will be on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because if it's later, especially if he darshans, it's not a problem. The question is, can we treat him as a gadol lekula, that it can be moiti someone in kiddush, he gets an aliyah? So that is something I can't say with certainty, because again, there are reasons to say he's an Adar baby, and some Gedolei Yisrael said he's a Nisan baby. So to give a maftir Rosh Chodesh Adar, or any, that's fine, or any week, in those days, because a maftir cotton could get. But if a God will tell you, treat him fully as an Adar baby, I know where he's coming from. If someone says, no, he's a Nisan baby, again, I know where they're coming from also. A really enjoyable question is a child was born Lamed Shvat. Now, Lamed Shvat means that there are 2 days Rosh Chodesh Adar. Let's be very real. Next week, Lamed Shvat is Tuesday, which is Aleph Rosh Chodesh Adar, and Wednesday is Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon. Adar. Okay? So he was born Lamed Shvat, Aleph the Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon. Okay? But the problem is that year he was born Lamed Adar, but it was a pshuta, not like this year. Lamed Adar, Lamed Shvat on a pshuta. Now, Rabbi, you do know this, that 2 days Rosh Chodesh has nothing to do with 2 extra Adars. You could have 2 days Rosh Chodesh any month. So he was born Lamed Shvat on a pshuta. I gave you that mashal so you could relate to that. And 13 years later is now. Now his bar mitzvah is going to be this year. This next week, actually. When is his bar mitzvah? Next week you have to decide, because bar mitzvah sometime next week. So you're wondering, what's the problem? This is not a vanishing Lamed Adar. Lamed Shvat is on the calendar. It's wonderful. So what's the problem? Isn't Lamed Shvat, that when he's born, a perfect shidduch to Lamed Shvat, Gimel, Parshas Truma, next week, Abba Aleinu L'Toiva? So what's the shaila? No. What's the shaila, Rabbi say? Listen to the argument that the Binyan Tzion L'Shitosei Mosik Midvash says. So the Binyan Tzion, if we assume 2 days Rosh Chodesh is Yom HaArichta, so what's his real birthday? Lamed Shvat, also known as Rosh Chodesh Adar. When is Rosh Chodesh? Any day in Adar's bar mitzvah this coming year? A month plus Friday, Parshas Pikudei. Because there are no bar mitzvahs in Adar Rishon this year. So Zok the Binyan Tzion L'Shitasa, you're going to have to make bar mitzvah in Erev Shabbos, or Thursday actually, Parshas Pikudei, a month beyond Lamed Shvat of next week. Azoi Tainet the Binyan Tzion the Orchaner. Now, L'maisa, That's his time, and he proves from a chelkas mechaykik. But there is a big, big makam l'chalik. Why are you so quick to treat it as Rosh Chodesh Adar when its identity is Lamed Shvat? And especially if that day didn't disappear, if it's still here, so just give him Lamed Shvat. And Taka the Bir Halacha quotes of Shmuel Salant, Shmuel Diskin, and other Gedolim that said, in such a case, as long as the day didn't disappear like Lamed Adar, then give him Lamed Shvat. Was against him? They become a mitzvah Lamed Shvat. So how can we go and push it off till Parshas Pikudei? And they say so much so that he has a bar mitzvah on next week, Tuesday, even Lakula. Rav Vosna says in Chelik Yud Kufay has a beautiful svara, and he says when you have 2 Adarim, then we could say that the first doesn't count. But who said 2 days Rosh Chodesh, the first it doesn't count? So Lamed Shvat is still on the map. Did you find Lamed Shvat? When is Lamed Shvat? Next Tuesday? Mazel Tov. Make it. But then he says, Lamais the BNC, and says you have to wait till Pikudei. So make his bar mitzvah, but don't count them as a gadol until Pikudei. Pull a play. The Lamed Shvat is there. The Pupa Rav also Yan Yois, the same tshuva. He says like the Binyan Sion, it's Yom HaRichta. But then he says, wait, Yom HaRichta is only shaykh when the day vanishes, when there's no day like Lamed Adar. But Lamed Shvat is still there. But he at the end also says, maybe you should l'chumra treat him like a cotton until Pikudei. You could put on tefillin and everything else, l'chumra, from next Tuesday, Gimel, Truma. But wait to consider him a gadol d'oraisa until a month from now. So this is mamish vintage cover HaTorah, that you look at how to touch up a day in Rosh Chodesh. Is Lamed Shvat an eigen day for itself? Now the Pupa Rav does mention a beautiful factor. Doesn't help much, but he does say, if the child was born Lamed Shvat before the Moilid of Adar, then you're more comfortable to say that he's a Shvat baby. Because he has no shaykhs to Adar. It's called Rosh Chodesh. That's a Shvat baby. But once he passed the Moilid, he's already an Adar baby. Maybe you should wait l'chumra until Pikudei. But the beauty of this sugya is that some taka hold, that the Bir Halacha quotes some that held, that he's a Lamed Shvat, Gimel, Truma baby, Lahakol even. He could be married to someone in Kiddush and everything else. Because after all, that's his birthday. So we see Lamed Adar and Lamed Shvat are 2 different Welten. One Leikar of Zelzeh. Moving on to a different month, just a few more points I wanted to mention. A child is born Rosh Chodesh Tevis. Only one day. Simple. No. Okay? Now, but it's bar mitzvah, there are 2 days Rosh Chodesh. The way it goes is Lamed Kislev and Rosh Chodesh Tevis. And that comes out 4 out of 7 times. So you're wondering, what's the Shaila? B'chayra, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, right? But you think about it, it's a different day. He was born on a Rosh Chodesh Tevis, and now we're going to have Lamed Kislev, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and then Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the second day Rosh Chodesh. So when is his bar mitzvah? Zok the Bach, who cares which day Rosh Chodesh it is? After he was born after Chavtes Kislev, he was Rosh Chodesh Tevis. His birthday is Rosh Chodesh Tevis, regardless of what is the day first, second day Rosh Chodesh. He was born Rosh Chodesh Tevis, and now we have Rosh Chodesh Tevis, Lamed Kislev Rosh Chodesh Tevis. When is his birthday? On Lamed. That's after Chavtes comes Lamed. Who cares that he was born on one day Rosh Chodesh, now it was 2 days. It's the day of his birth. Now this, the Sharatzians quotes the El Yerabah and the Kiva Ega and the Chaim that say this. The El Yerabah himself points out that maybe it doesn't stem. If he was born on Rosh Chodesh Tevis, so when should the bar mitzvah be? On the real Rosh Chodesh Tevis, which means Beis the Rosh Chodesh Tevis. Yeah, right. Not Lamed when he was born, but the next day actually. The Mishnah Berurah makes nothing of this, and he says his birthday is the first day of Rosh Chodesh after Chavtes, like it was when he was born. So that's a beautiful insight where you see, when you have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, where do we go? How do we look at it? Do you look at it like it's an absolute day after Chavtes, or he was born on the real Rosh Chodesh, and then his bar mitzvah will be a day later on the real Rosh Chodesh? Now, a child that was born Lamed Cheshvan, and of course after Lamed Cheshvan goes Rosh Chodesh Kislev. The bar mitzvah year, there's only one day. It goes Chavtes, Aleph Kislev. When's his bar mitzvah? So someone wants to say, well, he's born the last day in Cheshvan, so let's make his birthday a day earlier. Now, that's ridiculous. But it's interesting that the Mishnah makes a point of saying that that's ridiculous, because you count days. So he was taka born on Lamed Cheshvan, bar mitzvah is going to be on Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Now listen to a Ma'aseh Shahaya, unfortunately a true story. Someone was born 13 years earlier on Zois Chanukah. He made a beautiful Suda, Leil Zois Chanukah. The next morning he wanted to give his son an aliyah, because the boy bayay. And the Rabbi, who's very astute, says, I remember when he was born, check the calendar if he's really bar mitzvah. And guess what? He was not bar mitzvah yet. He was a day too soon. And I'll tell you the Pashta Cheshvan. This child was born Gimel Tevis, Zois Chanukah. Those facts are correct. But that year, there was only one day Rosh Chodesh Tevis. Tevis changes from 1 to 2. Mal 1 and Mal 2. So let me tell you the chronological order. Chavtes was the 5th Lichtala. Rosh Chodesh Tevis was the 6th. Beis Tevis was the 7th Lichtala. And Gimel Tevis was Zois Chanukah. So his birthday was Zois Chanukah, Gimel Tevis. The year of his bar mitzvah, there was 2 days Rosh Chodesh. So the way the Cheshvan was, Chavtes Kislev was the 5th, Lamed Kislev was the 6th, Aleph Teves was the 7th, Beis Teves was the 8th, Zois Chanukah, and his bar mitzvah should have been on Isru Chag Chanukah. We'll give it a nice name, consolation prize. But he was off. So the Mussar Haskel is never count birthdays, bar mitzvah, anything, with the end of Chanukah. Better stick with the actual date and don't go beyond that. Now this is all basically as far as bar mitzvahs are concerned. Yahrtzeit, Pashtus, we would say, is the same thing. What should change? But the Pele is the Mechaben Tov Kuf Samachez Zayin says that Yahrtzeit, a person died on a regular year, and then like this year, this Machzah, the yahrtzeit came out when there are 2 Adarim. Zok the Mechaba, you keep the yahrtzeit on the 2nd Adar. Zok the Ramah, no, Yesh Oimim, the Yis'an, the whole yahrtzeit is all about fasting. In those days they fasted very devotedly. But the Ramah says you keep the first yahrtzeit. But better would be if you keep both yahrtzeit. Now this is shocking. The Ramah says regarding my mitzvahs, 2nd Adar. Why yahrtzeit first? And why both? We have no OCD. We know the right day. Why have to do both? So to make a long story short, yahrtzeit is fundamentally different than bar mitzvah. Believe it or not, even though it's totally in a date. The Maril in 2 Chuvas Lamed Aleph, and again in the end of Kufay, says he kept yahrtzeit on the 1st Adar. And his svara was that bar mitzvah is totally in the calendar date, 13 years. So then, when you're talking about years, the ik is the Sheni. That's shaka true. But yahrtzeit is like a neder to fast, and neder is totally in Lashon B'nai Adam. Which is the real Lashon B'nai Adam? Adar Rishon. That's what Mariel says, which is a little of a chiddush, but I think a little more, we can understand a little better the Trumas Hadeshin and Simon Reish Sadik Dalit says, if the first yahrtzeit comes your way, how could you push it off? But also, what's the svara? But I think the svara that really explains it well is the Levush, the beginning of Tov Reish Pei Hey. He says yahrtzeit is that the father needs chusim and the son needs chusim. It's a reya mazlei. So you matzel aviv from Dina Shel Gehenim, and he saves himself. The earlier the better. Do it as early as you can. If worse comes to worse, if you really need this chusim the second, it's there for you. It doesn't dissolve. Voshnela. That's what Eim Avin Al Mitzvahs. It's generating chusim. The earlier the better. So it comes out of Mordika Chiddush. that bar mitzvah is totally in your gimel shana v'yom echad, whatever. So that's totally in the actual date. Yahrtzeit, ein mavin ala mitzvahs, was schneller, was besser. Now you could understand why the Ramah recommends do it on both. Because don't forget, the Mechaber holds Adar Sheni. The Chasam Sofer, unlike all of the poskim in the Tshuvas Kuf Samar Gimel, says Adar Sheni. Neshama is totally in the real Adar. But the Ramah and most Rishon and early Achrayim, Shumas Hadesh and Maril and Mevayil and the Mebruna, say first one. So a son that wants to be devoted says it's Koshen and Geld, and it's the biggest schus to do both. So really, we have to do Adar Rishon because we follow the Ramah. But since you have a Mechaber and a Chasam Sofer, you do both. Two people over the years told me that one heard from Rav Ozna, one heard from Debetzina Rav to keep Adar Sheni, which is not a chiddush to me because they went with the psak of the Chasam Sofer. But I must tell you, Ram Brisk was also a Chasam Sofer mensch. In the Kuv Chav Ches, he says even though the Chasam Sofer says to keep Adar Sheni, but all of the poskim say Adar Rishon, and we can't follow the Chasam Sofer. But at least I give you a little feeling why we have this major discrepancy regarding yahrtzeit. The Ikad Din for Ashkenazim is the first yahrtzeit, Adar Rishon. We do both because of this suffix. Now, versteht sich, if you do both, it's fine, wonderful, learning and tzedakah. But to take an amud from someone who is a real yahrtzeit on Adar Sheni, that's taka wrong. Because it's only an extra credit. Now to get the maftir and the musaf and the Shabbos before is like a chumrah gabi chumrah, so that, we say don't fight about any yahrtzeit, even a real yahrtzeit. The Ramah says, the Magen Ram says in Nun Gimel Sitkot and Chavav never to fight about any aliyah, certainly not this one. But at the end of the day, I must tell you that the Ikka yahrtzeit is the first, Minig Yisrael to keep both when it doesn't interfere with someone else. Someone asked me that he's making an upsharing, and the child was born on a regular Adar, and now he has two Adarim. So then I guess we could say you look at the real Adar, so Adar Sheni. But last but not least, listen to this fascinating shayla. For some people, this is very important. Mishanichas Adar Mar B'Simcha. When does it start? Does it start next week or in 5 weeks? So Pashtus Ein Bein Adar Rishon Adar Sheni. Taka Chaim Kanievsky and I said the Chasam Sofer in the Tshuva writes that Adar Rishon is also Mar B'Simcha, and Rav Ozna quotes the Chazon Ish that said it starts from Adar Rishon. But I must tell you there's Kamat Mefurish in Rashi not like that. Rashi and Tainus on the Mishnah Daf Chavtes that Mishanichas Ad Mar B'Simcha, Rashi seems to be bothered by a kasha. Mishanichas Ad Mar B'Simcha, and what about Mishanichas Kislev? Chanukah is an 8-day Yom Tov, Purim is only 1 day. So Rashi says, Mishanichas Adar Yemei Nisim Hoyu Yisrael Purim uPesach. So zokt the Yaivitz, Shilas Yaivitz, Beis Peches, the Shuv Meyahava in Beis Shin Aleph, Rav Oz was mechavim to this in Yud Kuf Hey. Rashi is saying, why? What's the din of Mishanichas Adar Mar B'Simcha? Because it goes together with Nisim. And they're all mechavim to the same Yisoy that Rashi meant to say that Mishanichas Adar only goes on Adar Sheni, which is Samach and Nisim. Shem Zalman of the Cheshvan says without a svara in Yudches 35, but I think the most pashut svara is that if Adar Rishon is just a filler, so how could that be Mishanichas Adar B'Simcha? And I found the Levush in Tov Reish Pei that spells this out. Mazel Adar Dogim is only Adar Sheni. Now the Sasem says, why does he Lashon Adar Dogim Lashon Rabim? Both Adarim. Levush is Punt Fakert. But here's the Hachra. I think this is very good Hachra. If you hold Mishanichas Adar B'Simcha means Ein Simcha K'Simcha Satayra, a better davening, wonderful. But in some place, I don't want to say, Mishanichas Adar B'Simcha means like the Matamoish writes, Kol HaMoisif Liyos Meshuga Reza Meshubach. It means breaking the yeshiva property because Dav Zayin Freilach. Then, a Dailet Sor B'Shaitai. But for us that we saw today, our beautiful Simchas HaTorah, Mishanichas Adar starts next week. The Simchas HaTorah, I couldn't talk to you all.
I'm all right with Toiv Lev Mishta Talmud. B'Shem Yigishter, I'd like to thank our Smith for the wonderful share. Rabbi said, everybody knows what's going on in Ukraine. Nebuch, they're afraid that Russia will invade Ukraine. With these big schus, and there shouldn't be a war in the world. But the Stalin Rebbe Zayin Gezun 30 years ago sent Hishlichim Nemonim, many tzaddikim that went all over Ukraine all over Ukraine to save Yiddishkeit, to bring back thousands of neshamas, Avinu Shebashamayim. And now Rabbi Rishon, and now we have the Manala Moisid, Halachos, Rabbi Yakov Steinman, who's Moisid Nefesh every day. There's 12 Yigalite Mishpachas. They're bringing back hundreds of people and thousands of Yiddish and Neshamas back to Yiddishkeit, which includes making chasana, brisin, yeshivas, boys' schools, girls' schools, you name it. You have bachim with payers, shaking by davening and by learning, bringing back Neshamas from the biggest tzaddikim of our Rebbes and our Samsoife Einiglech with the greatest tzaddikim, bringing them back to Yiddishkeit. What a big shmira that is. What a big schus right now what's doing in Pinsk, in Kiev, in Lvov, all over. We have the Moisid HaKodesh Yad Yisrael asking everybody to have an appeal today, mamish now, to raise $1 million just to help the Schalimit. They need a budget of a few $1 million, but this Pashut mamish, they need to pay the chayvis. There's nobody, this is the Eibishter's kinderlach. This is the biggest schus they have, a schus for yourself. There's matching funds, give at least 100, 180, if you give more, 1,000, give whatever you can give. So the money goes straight to help the Yiddish kinderlach. In this chus, we only need chus and protection all over the world. We only need shemirim and hashamayim ruchnis, that we should have good children, good einiklach. There's no better chus than that. Giving for the Eibishter's kinder, Hashem Shamayim. We're asking everybody here to write the credit card machine here, bring $100, $180. Whatever you give will be matched by double and triple today to raise the $1 million to help the Eibishter's kinder. In this chus, everybody should be geholfen with gute doides, with only simchas as ein Tag v'toivre mishtatomit. Tiskele mitzvahs. Aber chaim nekashem Rosh Chodesh lezaka Yisrael Yisrael lefige ribbelem toim mitzvahs. Shelem an Yakov man tzidke yagdel toire v'yade Kaddish. Amen. 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 Yehei Shmei Rava Amen.